Coming up, the Lafayette Alliance, the American Friends of Lafayette, and what do these two have to do with you? This is your invitation to join up. Welcome to Living Lafayette. For the Lafayette Alliance here in LaGrange, Georgia, I'm Richard Ingram. We're recording this podcast in LaGrange, Georgia, here in West Georgia. LaGrange has a magnificent statue of the Marquis de Lafayette right downtown in Lafayette Square. It's a cast iron copy of the original in Le Puy-en-Velay, close to where Lafayette was born in Chevignac. The Lafayette Alliance, we think we ought to make a big deal out of that statue. And there's an argument behind that, a reason behind that. We think that story and that statue is compelling. We think people will come to see, they ought to come to see that statue. That statue is the image that fronts a thrilling story. And people will come to see that statue and to hear the story, and to do the gallery of things that there are to do that support that story. We think that we ought to invite visitors from New Orleans, Nashville, Newport News, a digital offensive. Have them come to LaGrange and see that statue, and then escort them to pastimes that we assemble that would give folks a novel experience. Here's the argument. First, that statue is the image that fronts a thrilling story. Now, in this podcast, we've been detailing Lafayette. But let me tell you what I tell whenever I go to talk with Lions Club or Rotary. I tell them about this thrilling story, and I condense it, synopsize it. Lafayette was, because it's always in the details that count, So Lafayette was born on September the 6th, 1757. His father dies, his mother dies, he's an orphan, but he is one of the wealthiest men as a consequence of his legacy in all Europe. He's raised by his grandmother, Marie Catherine, and two aunts, Marguerite, Madeline, and Louise Charlotte. He learns from them respect and kindness. They tell him stories of courage, about Joan of Arc, about the Battle of Minden, where his father died. And he reads Plutarch, and he reads Cicero. Republican principles take root. Early on, Lafayette wants a life of purpose, a life that is worthwhile. Purpose in search of its object. Lafayette marries Adrienne. It's an arranged marriage. He's 16, she's 14, and it works for 34 years. It's a partnership, and Adrienne is a force. Adrienne is the one who said, "Hope is an obligation." Lafayette is an officer. He's a captain in the French army. He's stationed at Metz up in northeastern France. He becomes a Mason, and on Tuesday, August the 8th, 1775, he's 17 years old. He hears for the first time in earnest about those merchants and farmers in America fighting for their independence. Purpose finds object. Lafayette will go to America, he decides, will fight alongside Americans for their independence. Against odds, his king tells him no, and his father-in-law tells him no, and by the way, you'll never amount to anything. Lafayette buys his own boat, La Victoire, sails to America. He befriends George Washington, fights at the Battle of Brandywine, and is wounded there. He is at Valley Forge, and then commands the right wing at Yorktown. Alexander Hamilton under his command. He needs more information about Lord Cornwallis. So he recruits an African American, James Armistead, diligent, intelligent. Armistead infiltrates the British camp. There in the British camp, Lord Cornwallis notices this diligent, intelligent African American. Lord Cornwallis recruits James Armistead to spy on Lafayette. James Armistead becomes a double agent. There was never any question about his loyalty. And on October the 19th, 1781, the world turned upside down. It's all over. Afterwards, Lord Cornwallis does the gentlemanly thing, goes to pay his respects to Lafayette, and there in Lafayette's camp, he sees James Armistead. "Well done," he says. "I've been played." Lafayette comes to understand a discordant bubble. Jefferson's words, "All men are created equal." Lafayette decides on a plan for emancipation for the black part of mankind. He proposes it to Washington. He proposes that he and Washington go together, that they buy land, slaves, that they outlaw corporal punishment, they educate them, they pay them for their labor, and then free them. That plan doesn't work out, so Lafayette launches on his own project in French Guiana, Cayenne, La Gabrielle. Slaves, outlaws corporal punishment, pay them for their labor, educate them, and then the French Revolution breaks out, and Lafayette is in the vortex of it. All his land confiscated, including La Gabrielle. Lafayette tries to hold middle ground between the two extremes, the Jacobins and the monarchists, but it's middle ground that won't hold. Lafayette is accused of treason, and he's called back to Paris to answer charges, knowing that if he does that, it'll be the guillotine. He steps across the border into Austria. He's captured. He is held for 5 years as a prisoner of state. A prisoner of state is different from a prisoner of war. A prisoner of state is someone whose ideas are so radical they can undermine the stability of the monarchy. 5 years. This points out an important concept: contingency. What happens depends. Lafayette had a decision to make. He could either despair or not. He never lost hope that he would be freed when he was in prison, and that decision was contingent on where he was born, the stories he was told growing up, on his readings of Plutarch and Cicero. Contingency. 5 years, an enforced, undistracted moment. Important decisions need time to think through. Lafayette spent that time thinking through what he would do with the rest of his life after he was freed, and he decided he would devote his life to liberty. Contingency and the undistracted moments, two important concepts. Napoleon is the one who arranged for Lafayette to be freed from prison. Napoleon demanded it out of the Austrians, and the Austrians complied. But when Napoleon came back from Waterloo and demanded dictatorial power, it was Lafayette who stood and said, "No, and it's time for you to abdicate," for the second time. And Napoleon did. But Lafayette was no ingrate. He didn't want Napoleon chunked into some dungeon. He tried to get a passport for Napoleon to America, but the Allies would have none of it, and Napoleon was banished to a rock out in the Atlantic. President James Monroe and Congress invited Lafayette back to America for a farewell tour to be the nation's guest, 1824-1825. For 13 months, he visited all 24 states, the number that existed at the time. And from March 19th through March 31st, he visited Georgia. He started at Savannah and went up to Augusta, and then Warrenton, Sparta, down to Milledgeville, across to Macon, and then south of Columbus and across the Chattahoochee to Fort Mitchell in Alabama. We know exactly where he crossed the Chattahoochee. In fact, it's at Engineers Landing, Fort Benning. The story may be apocryphal, but it is said that Lafayette made comment that that land reminded him of his home, the Chateau de LaGrange, some 40 miles east of Paris. Standing next to him was Julius Caesar Alford. Alford was a colonel in the Georgia militia, and he lived where there's a building now on Lafayette College at the time, Smith Hall. And he made the comment and the suggestion that the new county seat of Troup County be named LaGrange. And it was, December the 16th, 1828. Lafayette spent the rest of his life supporting independence movements in Italy, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Poland, say nothing of North and South America. He caught a chill. He died on Tuesday, May 20th, 1834, 76 years old. That statue fronts a thrilling story, rollicking, swashbuckling. And that story, here's an important part, an important element. That story rides on the ideas and ideals that unite us all. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that those ideals are living things and that they must be guarded and they have to be revitalized, reanimated for every generation, or else we take them for granted. We forget them. Lafayette stands for those ideals: liberty, equality, and justice, the three great ideas we act on. Respect and reciprocity, two things necessary for a democracy to function. And courage, said Aristotle, gratitude, said Cicero, the two fundamental building blocks of character, without which nothing works. Lafayette and civic health on that account go hand in hand. So these visitors coming to see that statue, they'll need an itinerary. So first they come to the square and they see the statue, and there's a costume guide. That guide will detail that statue. You do not understand why Hamlet is an important work unless someone who does understand points it out to you. The pivotal point of that statue is in Lafayette's outstretched right hand. He holds a cockade. Lafayette himself designed that cockade. It's a circular pleated ribbon, red, white, and blue, and it was meant to be a unifying symbol during the French Revolution. The white represented the monarchy, the red and blue, the people of Paris. It was meant to bring the people together. Scan down that statue. There are two medals on his chest. Scan on further down. That right knee is flexed, just like Michelangelo's David. And then etched in the base, the name of the sculptor, Ernest Eugene Yeo. So that guide points out the details of that statue. And then, in the corners of the square, there are reenactors. There's Lafayette. There's Adrienne, his wife. Washington. James Armistead. And then head down Bull Street and up Main Street. There are reenactors there. Lafayette's best friends growing up. The Vicomte de Noailles and the Comte de Ségur. There's Alexander Hamilton. There's Napoleon. There's Lafayette. You can see him right down there. There's Lafayette's, his idol growing up, Vercingetorix. Some people say Vercingetorix. I think Vercingetorix sounds much more powerful and solid. And in between, things for the children and all of us to do. So there's Lafayette ring toss and Lafayette cornhole. But then going into the restaurants, there's a menu. And there's a Lafayette burger and an Adrienne salad and a little two-line sidebar that tells you why the two and how the two are linked. And tutorials for the staff so they can be part of this conceit, so they're informed about Lafayette. And then into businesses and shops, there are posters and exhibits about Lafayette and the farewell tour, about Lafayette and abolition. And there's a bow tie station. This is a Lafayette bow tie. The little images are silhouettes of that statue downtown, teaching folks how to tie their own Lafayette bow tie. Listen, wear a Lafayette bow tie and it escalates your IQ 50 points just by its very presence. And then, of course, pointing out all the other amenities and showcases that are here in LaGrange. Now, as a consequence of putting together all these activities, people learn about Lafayette. People are able to tell the story about Lafayette. It creates a platform for imagination, unleashing powers of imagination that many folks don't get opportunity to deploy. And a platform for unity. Let's Lafayette. Here's what that means. People working together as equals, cooperatively, toward common purpose that benefits community. Well, we have to have a place to start. The American Friends of Lafayette are going to have their annual meeting here in LaGrange, Georgia, this June 8th through the 11th, 2023. The American Friends of Lafayette is an organization that they're just interested in Lafayette and his story. It's a group of people that enjoy getting together to talk Lafayette and to visit with one another. And they hold an annual meeting, usually in the likes of Boston or Annapolis or Yorktown. And they're coming to LaGrange, Georgia this June. They're going to have a wonderful time. June the 8th, Thursday evening, there will be a gathering and reception. And at that reception, at our local event center here in Lafayette, we're going to have a cast of 40. And they're going to present Lafayette's early life through the eyes of his two best friends, the Comte de Ségur and the Vicomte de Noailles. And Adrienne's parents are going to be there, the Duc d'Anne and Henriette. It was an arranged marriage. The Duc d'Anne, Adrienne's father, was much in favor of this. Here was a young boy who was available and very wealthy. Adrienne's mother wanted no part of it. Lafayette, she thought, was too young, probably arrogant, wanted none of it. It was a battle royal. It'll be on stage this Thursday evening. And Vercingetorix, Lafayette's idol growing up, will be on hand as well. And there'll be exhibits, likewise, right there next door in McClellan Parlor. And plus, we have one of the best culinary artists who will have some hors d'oeuvres with a Georgia flavor. And then Friday, of course, there's an American Friends of Lafayette business meeting. And then thereafter, Linda McMullen, who's our vice president, will give a lecture on Lafayette and abolition. And then over to Price Theater in LaGrange College and Lafayette's life in 60 minutes. Napoleon will be there. Alexander Hamilton will be there. George Washington will be there. A grand event. And then over to Lamar Dodd Art Center to see the Houdon and to see displayed works. And then that evening, there'll be a conversation with George Washington and General Lafayette himself back at Lafayette. Saturday morning, there'll be a big group photograph right in front of that statue. The American Friends of Lafayette always has a group photo every year, and this one will be an ideal in front of that statue, and then loading tour buses to go down to Engineers Landing and Fort Mitchell. But while the American Friends of Lafayette are on a field trip, we have a trolley that will be going around downtown, circling around that statue, and we invite parents and their children to come and take a ride on that trolley around LaGrange and down around hills and dales. And on the square that morning, Lafayette himself will be on the square. Ben Goldman portraying Lafayette, one of the best in the country. And Adrienne will be there later during the day, and James Armistead likewise. That evening, Adrienne herself will take the stage to tell her story at Dixon Hall over in college, and James Armistead will be on hand to tell his story likewise. Sunday morning, Hills and Dales to talk some about the farewell tour and Lafayette's legacy, which is a new camellia that's been developed just in Lafayette's honor. It'll be a grand time. Here's what you can do. First, join the Lafayette Alliance. Go to LafayetteLagrange.org, shop, and then membership. And there are several tiers. There's a standard membership, but then there is the La Victoire Society. La Victoire was the ship that Lafayette bought to come to America. There is the Hermione. That's the ship Lafayette came to America on the second time around with word for Washington that French men and money were on the way. The Cadmus. That's the packet ship that Lafayette rode to America, coming here for his farewell tour. Redoubt number 10. That's the fort that was at Yorktown that Lafayette ordered Alexander Hamilton to capture, and Hamilton did. There's the Corps Nun Society. Corps Nun was Lafayette's motto. Why not? It's etched on his coat of arms. And the Adrienne Society, Lafayette's wife, and the Cockade Society. Pick your pleasure. Become a member of the Lafayette Alliance. Help give the talks, to write the essays, to stage the theater, to fund the account. It's number one. Number two, join the American Friends of Lafayette. They have a great web page. Go to it. There's membership right there. It's $40 a year, but you get this essay. You get this gazette. It's 100 pages with essays and information on Lafayette and information on other events that are Lafayette linked likewise. The third thing you can do is add this to your vocabulary, this phrase, let's Lafayette. It takes a little work, a little practice, just to let it roll off the tongue, but Lafayette as verb, people working together as equals, cooperatively, toward common purpose, benefits community. Winston Churchill said, make your point, hammer it, then pile drive it. Well, there are 2 points here. Number one, Lafayette is great fun. Number two, Lafayette and civic health go hand in hand. Spot me number one, Lafayette is great fun. But let's pile drive number two. Lafayette and civic health go hand in hand. We're told to take a pill from memory, to take a capsule for our joints. Physical health is important. But what of civic health? Where is the pill for perseverance? Where is that capsule for courage? Lafayette and civic health go hand in hand. The Lafayette Alliance is about civic health. It's about telling a remarkable story that cradles the ideals that unite us. It's about exploring the past, understanding it, seeing it through Lafayette's eyes. Not to demonize, not to canonize, two torches that can fuel resentment today. It's to try to see things clearly. Lafayette highlights two important concepts necessary to civic health. First, the idea of the undistracted moment. Important decisions take an undistracted moment to decide. Lafayette had an enforced undistracted moment for 5 years. He decided what he would do with the rest of his life. It would be in service to liberty. Contingency. Contingency is a hinge. It's the hinge on which history pivots. What happens depends. What happens is contingent. Lafayette coming to America when he was 19 was contingent. Where he was born, stories he was told, reading Plutarch and Cicero. Here is where that platform for imagination comes in. What does contingency look like from a craftsman who can put it in the palm of your hand? What does an undistracted moment look like that you can feel, that you can put in your pocket? Lafayette and civic health go hand in hand. What exactly is civic health? Liberty, equality, and justice, the three great ideas we act on. Respect and reciprocity, two things necessary for democracy to work. Courage and gratitude, the basic building blocks of character. What exactly does Lafayette stand for? Lafayette and civic health go hand in hand. This is your invitation to become a Lafayetteonian. Join the Lafayette Alliance. LafayetteLaGrange.org. shop membership. Choose your level. Help us to tell the stories. Help us to write the essays, to stage the theater, to fund the account. Join the American Friends of Lafayette. Go to their website. Get that Gazette. You'll be thrilled at the story. You'll be inspired by the ideals. Let's Lafayette. There will be some who will suggest that it's a stretch, to which I reply with Lafayette's motto, pour on. This is Living Lafayette, to discover, to inform, to entertain. Till next time.